Okay, so now that we've placed an image in, we're going to actually talk for a bit about bringing in logos. So I've given you, for this project, the logos that you'll need, but I have one open here in Illustrator that we're going to look at. And first I just want to talk about logos in Illustrator items. We're going to, of course, go over the difference between what's called vector art and raster art further in the term when we get into our more detailed Photoshop exercises. However, logos are primarily done in and provided in Illustrator. And the reason for that is because it can be done as what's called line art. And if I do Command Y here, I'm in Illustrator. If I do Command Y, you'll see that this is showing the actual outlines of this particular logo. And all of these are just their objects. Right now they're grouped. But when you look at these objects, they have all these points. Those are called vector points, or they're called anchor points. But what they are actually is they're locations in the document. So that's where the term vector comes from, vector artwork. It's in reference to the points that are being used to essentially connect the lines and build the artwork. So we use this because pixel artwork, if this was a logo that was built in Photoshop, for example, although Photoshop retains some vector artwork qualities, the true working aspects of Photoshop don't allow for much to be done in its vector form. So that would have to be rasterized, or what is also turned into pixels, pixel art. Now pixels are a little different in the sense that they fill all the space. You've seen when you zoom in on an image, you get all that pixelation. Well, we can zoom in on this as close as we want, or go as far away from it as we want, and it will always remain a crisp object. And that allows for what's called tooling. So tooling is when we use different machines that the computer communicates with to make anything from signage to stickers and so on. But primarily it's so that the logo retains its proper qualities, anything from color to shape and so on. And it's allowed to be used in all mediums. So you're going to find that if you are working with logos, if you get into in any of your work where you're asking for logos or you're receiving logos, they're going to be provided likely in Illustrator. Hopefully they will be. That means at least they're being provided in the correct format. There's always exceptions, but it's the most common and the most usable for all mediums that we use logos for. So I've given you the logos in Illustrator, and this is the Bell one, so it has the brand elements that they have separated here, and then the full logo that's grouped, and then the French version as well. Now, we can get this into Illustrator in a few ways. The way that I prefer to bring my logos into Illustrator, because I like to maintain some control and just make life easier, is by simply copying and pasting. So I select it, and we've seen this before, the main selection tool, the main cursor over here, in InDesign, but the same thing applies in Illustrator. So using that main selection tool, and because these are grouped, I can just click on it. I'm just clicking and dragging across. I select it, I'm going to copy, Command C, and I'll go to InDesign, and I'm just going to do Command V, and it's going to land in the center of my page. I'll do Command 0 to reset the page. Now when you do that, you're going to be seeing all these little blue outlines. You can barely see it because I'm zoomed in, but when I zoom out, some of them become more pronounced. Those are they're indicating that these are shapes. So what I essentially did was take vector art from Illustrator that's grouped, and I pasted it into InDesign, which is also a vector art program. And any shape, any item in InDesign has what's called a frame around it. So these blue lines that we're seeing are frames. It's not an actual blue outline around those shapes that you would have to get rid of. If I go into our presentation mode by pressing W, we'll see that they go away. So that's the first way that we can bring those, bring Illustrator art or our logos in. It's, again, my preferred way, just to go to the Illustrator file, copy and paste what I need. The other way is, of course, placing it in. So if I were to go to File and Place, and I go to my folder where I have that logo, there it is. So that's the Illustrator folder or file. I can place that file in, just like an image. The problem with that, you can see I haven't clicked yet, but it's going to bring in all aspects of that file. I don't need all of them, but also when it does that, you'll see that it's coming in as an image. It's behaving as an image in InDesign, and it won't let me do anything even specific, or really I'm just working with something in a frame again. So I would have to hide, by closing the frame, I would have to hide these elements that I don't want. And then when I scale, I have to remember to do Command Shift, click and drag to scale, where here, because it's an object or it's a group of objects, I just need to hold Shift when I scale. I can also, if I wanted to, I could actually go in and it'll let me ungroup all of this, and I can work on it separately because they're both vector programs, InDesign and Illustrator. So there's a lot more freedom, and it's just a lot easier to work with. So my recommendation, just going to group this back again, Command G. My recommendation is to open the Illustrator file in Illustrator, select what you want, copy it, and paste it right into InDesign. And the other thing that does is, because we're working with brand components in Illustrator, the Bell logo has its specified colors. There's a specific Bell blue. If I get my swatches open over here, we'll see that's a little Pantone color there. We're going to talk about Pantones further in the term, but a Pantone, you've probably heard the term, but this has been a designated specific color that Bell uses. So it's kind of like a packaged color. It's like a code, and they like that color code, and they turn it into a product, essentially. Bell makes sure that all of their blue, anytime they use blue, they're using that Pantone color, which is 301, and that C stands for coded. So when we paste into InDesign, that swatch comes in as well. So you'll see in our swatches, if you have your swatches open, and if you don't, you can access them through the window menu in the color there, or you may have them already showing in your right side panels. So when I need to color something, I've already brought this in knowing I have the Bell blue. Well, we're going to find when we start working with shapes that we're going to use that swatch. We're staying on brand. We already have the swatch in there. So it's a lot easier to work with when you just copy and paste rather than do what we did here and place it in. Again, you're always trying to work with InDesign so that you're controlling the program and you're working as fluid as you can. Placing logos in, that creates rigidity in your work environment that you will probably find more frustrating than helpful. Okay, so I'm going to delete this and we'll move on.